What is dopamine? If you've been hanging out in ADHD groups or reading ADHD books or blogs or watching ADHD YouTube or listening to ADHD podcasts, there's a chance that you've come across the word dopamine. Your dopamine levels are low. You need to boost your dopamine. Dopamine. Okay, I get it. Dopamine is important when it comes to ADHD. But what is dopamine? Where does it come from? What does it do? How can I get more of it? If you've ever wondered about these questions, stay tuned for today's episode of the ADHD Mompreneur, where we are going to discuss what dopamine is, why you need it, and some ways that you can increase it. But really quick before we dive into today's topic, I would like to introduce myself in case you're new here. My name is Christy Lingo, and I am the ADHD Mompreneur. I'm an executive function and accountability coach for ADHD mom business owners who know that they can build an amazing, successful business while juggling their family life. They just need a little help and support around deciding what to do first or staying on track. If you'd like to learn more about my coaching programs and how I can support you, make sure to visit theadhdmompreneur.com. And while you're there, pick up my free 11 essential checklists for ADHD mompreneurs to help jumpstart feeling more organized and productive while forgetting fewer steps. Okay, let's start at the very beginning. What is dopamine? Dopamine is a neurotransmitter or a chemical messenger in your body that helps to communicate messages and process information. It's derived from the amino acid L-tyrosine. Put a pin in that one. Most notably, dopamine is responsible for helping you to recognize pleasure or reward. But it doesn't actually create the pleasure or the reward. It's more of a signal to your body saying, hey, this thing is really enjoyable. Perhaps we should remember to do it again. So because dopamine is released when you're laughing with your friends, or you're eating your favorite meal, or engaging in some of your favorite activities, your brain will say to you, we should do that thing again. You know, the one that you really liked doing? In other words, dopamine helps motivate you by reminding you of the pleasure that this activity has previously invoked. Along with motivating behaviors, dopamine is also associated with bodily functions like movement, lactation, which was a new one for me, and executive functions like memory, behavior, learning, attention, and mood regulation. These executive functions take place in a part of the brain known as the prefrontal cortex. And the neurotransmitter that carries the messages to the prefrontal cortex is, drumroll please, dopamine. After the dopamine is done doing its job, it hops in a dopamine transmitter and heads back to where it started in a process known as dopamine reuptake. And the cycle starts all over again. Great! Now that we have a bit of an understanding about what dopamine is and what it does, let's talk a little bit about how it relates specifically to ADHD. Or, is ADHD dopamine deficiency? And the answer is, well, sort of, kind of, in a way, but we're not really sure. Let me explain. Deficiency is a lack or shortage of something. Dysfunction is an abnormality or impairment in the function of a specified bodily organ or system. ADHD could be due to a shortage or deficiency of dopamine in your system, meaning that you have less available to do those things that dopamine is responsible for. ADHD could also be a dopamine dysfunction due to the fact that the dopamine reuptake after you've achieved what you've been working towards is so much faster, and thus you don't get to relish in the sweet, sweet reward you worked so hard for. So honestly, as of right now, research is saying that ADHD and dopamine could be a little of column A, meaning that you have lower than normal levels of dopamine available, or a little bit of column B, meaning that your dopamine uptake, taking that dopamine out of your system quicker, could lead to lower levels of dopamine available for executive functions. But don't despair. Even though you may have a little less dopamine than your neurotypical counterparts, or your dopamine might not stick around as long as theirs, there are some ways that you can increase the amount of dopamine in your system. Let's start with eating tyrosine-rich foods. Remember I said that the amino acid tyrosine was the building block for dopamine? It makes sense then, if you include more tyrosine-rich foods in your diet, you may see a boost in the amount of dopamine available in your system. More research does need to be done to know exactly how much tyrosine you may need to eat in order to see these results. But based on this list of L-tyrosine-rich foods, I don't see any drawbacks to adding them to your diet anyways. And they include almonds, apples, avocados, bananas, beets, chicken and other poultry, chocolate, dairy foods, green leafy vegetables, green tea, lima beans, oatmeal, oranges, peas, sesame and pumpkin seeds, soy, tomatoes, turmeric, watermelon, and wheat germ. Next up, let's talk supplements. There are several suggested supplements out there that could potentially have an impact on increasing your dopamine levels. And as with almost anything new that you are going to put into your body, I highly recommend that you consult a doctor or a medical professional before beginning any sort of supplement regimen. With that said, here are some supplements that may help you to increase your dopamine availability. L-tyrosine. This is the same amino acid that shows up in those foods that is the building block for dopamine. And while there's very little research out there about L-tyrosine supplementation and ADHD specifically, there is some research showing that increased L-tyrosine levels can help to increase your ability to switch tasks and improve your working memory. Next, L-theanine. Like L-tyrosine, there isn't a ton of research out there linking L-theanine and improvement in ADHD symptoms. We do know that L-theanine does help in the production of dopamine in your system. And I did find a study from 2021 which suggested that L-theanine may help improve working memory and executive function by improving focus and your ability to pay attention. Next, vitamin B6. B6 plays a role in the creation of all neurotransmitters, and it is thought to help L-tyrosine convert into dopamine. Typically, you will get an adequate amount of B6 from the foods that you eat in your diet, but if you are deficient, it may lead to symptoms like brain fog and overall poor mental performance. Next, omega-3 fatty acids. A promising study from 2015 found that boys with and without ADHD improved their inattention when supplemented with omega-3 fatty acids. But there's yet to be an exact explanation why. And finally, vitamin D and magnesium. A 2021 study of ADHD children found that 72% had both vitamin D and magnesium deficiencies. After 8 weeks, participants who received vitamin D and magnesium supplements showed a marked improvement in emotional conduct and peer problems as opposed to those who received the placebo. But as with all of these supplements, more research is needed. Next up, exercise. Now, I have said for a while that exercise is by far, in my opinion, the best way to manage your ADHD symptoms. It increases blood flow to the brain, which can improve memory. It helps improve brain plasticity and your ability to learn. It increases endorphins, which can lead to mood regulation. And it increases dopamine production as well as dopamine receptor density, meaning that there are now more places for your increased dopamine to stop off and send messages like, hey, pay attention, or hey, don't forget to do that thing. Next, let's chat a little about medication. Now, I'm not here to debate the pros and cons of stimulant medication. I truly believe that that is something specifically between you and your doctor. But I would be remiss if we were talking about dopamine and I didn't at least give you an overview of what stimulant medications do. There are two major types of stimulant medications available for those with ADHD. The methylphenidate family, commonly known as Ritalin, will slow down dopamine reuptake in your system, meaning that you have more available for executive function. The amphetamine and dextroamphetamine family, aka Adderall, stimulates the central nervous system into releasing additional dopamine and other neurotransmitters into your system. There are other prescribed medications that are available for ADHD symptom management, but since they aren't directly related to dopamine and dopamine production, I didn't include them here today. But if you are interested in learning about non-stimulant options, I recommend talking to your doctor or medical care provider. And here are a few more dopamine-inducing activities that you can use when you're struggling to focus or you need a little boost. Try getting outside and getting some sun. Take a cold shower. Listen to music that you love. Try meditation. It helps, believe me. Start creating a dopamine menu or a list of things that bring you joy so you can boost your dopamine when you're just not feeling it. Hopefully, I've helped you better understand what dopamine is and how it impacts your brain and your life as someone with ADHD. If you've got more dopamine questions, feel free to drop them in the comments below, or if you're not watching on YouTube or Spotify, drop me an email at christy@theadhdmompreneur.com. Or maybe you want to share with me your favorite dopamine-inducing activities. I'm always looking to add to my repertoire. And before I let you go, don't forget to hit the follow or subscribe button so you don't miss any of my upcoming episodes like next week, where I am going to share some of the things that help to make my life easier as a mom and an entrepreneur with ADHD. Until then, keep making your ADHD journey part of your success story. If you're a business-owning mom with ADHD, you're going to need to grab my free, customizable essential checklists for ADHD mompreneurs by visiting bit.ly/checklists for ADHD mompreneurs or by following the link in the episode description. Do it now before you forget. Until next time,